Hello and welcome to the Jackcast, the Swansea City podcast. I'm Guto Llewellyn, and with me, as always, we have Steve Carroll and Matt Barocco. Evening, boys.
Evening.
Evening.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. We've got two games to look back at. Two opponents from the West Midlands, West Bromwich Albion at home, Birmingham City away. We'll be looking ahead to Peterborough and the visit away to Coventry. And I'm sure we'll be able to squeeze in a bit of Cardiff chat in the middle, seeing as they have finally bitten the bullet and got rid of Mick McCarthy. We'll be assessing who we would like to see as their next manager and who we think is the most likely to get the job. But before that, boys, we'll go back all the way to last Tuesday. And Matt, we'll start with you. Was this our best performance of the season? I think it's fair to say that it was the best result when you take out all the emotion of the derby. But the 2-1 win against promotion-chasing West Bromwich Albion, our best performance of the season, would you say?
Yeah, I think that's a fair shout. It was most impressive with all the, when you consider all the factors involved. Of course, West Brom flying high, the reaction to the early goal, which we'll get onto in a bit, but the complete control that we had from pretty much the opening goal, really, but certainly from the 20th, 25th minute onwards, it was really a contrast of styles against each other, but we had all of it, and West Brom really had little to do apart from try and keep us at bay, which, to be fair, they managed to do so with some very close offside shouts for a lot of it, but it did feel so relieving and also so deserving when we did grab the late winner, because it felt like this is justice. We have really turned up here tonight. We talked in last week's pod about the threat of after the Lord Mayor show. It felt like that could be the case after 20 odd seconds, but no, there was a reaction. It was a very good reaction, and the players. The second half, in particular, was a stellar performance, as I remember, under Russell Martin.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, that first half, I think it's fair to say West Brom, controlled the game very well. We had all the possession, but we didn't get anywhere near their goal. Olivier Ntcham came on at halftime, and I personally feel he was a real game changer. We just needed that dynamism in midfield, and suddenly something clicked, but Matt kind of said it there. We needed that goal. We needed that one ball over the top to go right. And, Joel Piroe in on goal again. I mean, these days when he gets into those types of positions, he's not going to miss, is he? That's the attitude I have. And what I love about Piroe is he can be quiet for long periods, but every time he gets on the ball, he seems to make something happen. And we saw that again on Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, he gets in and it's just very relaxing thinking, well, you think he's going to score. And obviously it was a lovely little ball over the top. I was waiting for that flag to go up because both linesmen seemed obsessed with it on Wednesday night, which was very annoying. But then when I saw the hand go up, I'm thinking, Christ, he's in here. I mean, West Brom are playing such a high line that if you were to get it right, there's a lot of space to run into. And I was surprised their goalkeeper really was, he wasn't further out, because that did mean there was such a big gap for Piroe to get into. And then he shoved off the defender. I'm not sure if it was Bartley or not, but once he was in that situation then, I was just waiting for the net to bulge really. And yeah, it's a lovely little finish from there. I mean, Piroe is such a find. I mean, I'm assuming it was Andy Scott that discovered him really, but I mean, what a signing he's been. I remember I think it was a tweet from you actually, Guto, saying he scores all different types of goals, and he really does. I mean, if you look at the one against Cardiff, I mean, he's a left-footed player, and that was a pretty assured finish with a right foot. I mean, there was a right-footed one at Preston as well. I think plenty of other left-footed ones. I mean, this is a quality player. We're very lucky to have him, and hopefully he'll be with us for a good while, because even if I didn't think we were a good side, when you've got a striker like that, if you give him chances, you can win games that you probably don't deserve to win, just because you have got someone that can stick the ball in the net. It's such a game changer for you. And, that was a lovely taken goal, and it got us back in it. And I felt we deserved it, to be honest with you, because we were playing really well at this point, and it was really encouraging, wasn't it?
Yeah, and I thought in the second half especially, we were stretching West Brom. We were making life very uncomfortable for them. Don't get me wrong, West Brom could have scored too. It was, they had their chances, especially the shot from distance, which Hema tipped onto the bar. But Matt, the real moment of quality to seal the game came from Jamie Patterson, and we've seen some very, very good goals scored by the Swans this season. Where does this one rank for you? Is that one right up there among the best?
Well, I think the problem is we have seen 3 or 4 quality goals this season. It's certainly it's got to be in the top 3. The stylishness, and in the way he takes the ball through Bartley's legs, and perhaps a little bit lacking in finesse in the finish, but he does exactly what he needs to do. He just prods it past the keeper who's rushing out, and he nestles beautifully in the back of the net. But it was so stylish, in a man full of confidence, and you can see that he's in the form of his career at the moment, and I can't believe that he was available on a free transfer. And what's beautiful about the whole synergy of it is we just spoke about Joel Pirro, who is thriving off Jamie Patterson. Well, this was a goal that was created by Pirro for Patterson, and their relationship, which you always see with a dynamic front two, is you need to have that. You need to have a good relationship. You need to have one drop in for the other one to go past, and that's exactly what happened. Pirro was deeper. Patterson made the run onto the back line, and Pirro fed him, and the rest was done by the former Bristol City man. But the way those two seem to know exactly when to play the pass. I mean, like you say, Pirro's goal was perfectly timed. The pass was perfectly timed, and we've seen that several times already this season, where Pirro's run was picked out perfectly by Patterson, and nice to see him return the favour, really. Those two are going to be so important to us, at least until January, where we will hopefully reinforce that front attacking options. But at the moment, our form and opportunity to get results is quite heavily dependent on those two playing well, because when they do, they're really difficult to stop.
And Steve, it's a hell of a contrast to last season, because Jamal Lowe and Andre Ayew, they definitely pitched in with the goals last season. They scored more than 30 between them, which is pretty good for a front two. But they never ever showed anything like the kind of chemistry that we were already seeing from Pirro and Patterson. And in fairness, it's the kind of chemistry that we haven't seen from two attacking Swansea players in a long time, I would say. But it does show, doesn't it, what we were missing last season, and the lack of synergy and the lack of understanding that we had up front last season, which frustrated us so much, from two very hard-working strikers, but ones that just could not get on the same wavelength. And somehow these two players, despite, the fact that they're at different stages in their careers, they're from very different footballing backgrounds, different styles, they've somehow just found this great relationship with each other.
Yeah, it's one of those things you can't really ask for much more, can you, in that situation? I mean, we're very lucky that these two players seem to have found this really good understanding, really, and long may it continue, because I mean, it's quite priceless. I suppose you get a little bit lucky with it in some ways. I mean, you can never expect that some players seem to just completely be on each other's wavelengths. So we've seen it in the last few games. I mean, Patterson put in Pirro in for the Cardiff game, and then we saw the vice versa, really, and again for the West Brom game. So it is really encouraging, isn't it? I mean, we just seem to be a lot better going forward now. That's the main thing, because I think before that, I mean, we had that mad half at Luton where we managed to bang 3 goals in, but for being honest, we've looked quite toothless in a lot of games, and it's just been, maybe the odd finish from Pirro that's got us on the score sheet, really. So, it is more encouraging, isn't it? The 3 against Cardiff, got a couple against West Brom. We're going to talk about Birmingham shortly, won't we? But we just needed to offer that more of a goal threat, really, didn't we? And I think that understanding between those two is only going to help us, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely. And Matt, I was interested in the West Brom reaction to the defeat, because it was only their second defeat of the season. But it did unleash this kind of wave of frustration among their fans, which has been building gradually. And we discussed a bit on the podcast last week about how this kind of simmering resentment about their style of play was starting to bubble up, and we saw it bubble over after losing to us. And I mean, I thought there was something very satisfying in the way that we beat West Brom. Just, they were brutal. They really were pretty thuggish in their play, and we outplayed them and got the 3 points. And there was obviously a real frustration among the West Brom fans in the way that they'd lost that match. And it just goes to show again that playing that kind of direct, very physical football is fine when you are winning. Fans will get on board with any style as long as it's producing results. But as soon as it stops producing results, suddenly, fans get a little bit antsy about the whole thing, and they lose their patience. And it's, again, maybe a reminder of Swansea last season.
Yeah, like you just said there, I mean, people only just have to listen back to a podcast last season when you felt like we were winning in spite of our performances rather than because of them, and we were pointing out that we've seen the word lucky probably. If we got a pound every time we used that word last season, we'd be quite rich, to be honest with you, because we seem to have all the rub of the green, which we lacked completely under previous managers. We never seemed to get it, but we'd saved it up for Steve Cooper's reign, and had good success with it. Look, 2 playoff finishes is remarkable for a team that was being, selling its players every summer and January. So we were clever in the transfer market, but we were always a negative result away from thinking, look, this isn't sustainable long term. We can watch a win and think, how on earth have we won that? But we'll take the 3 points. And you just know that performances without results, we will think, right, okay, we can get there. But if you don't have the performances, then you're entirely dependent on making sure you get the results. And we weren't surprised. We were talking about this in the preview of the West Brom game last week, that West Brom fans are perhaps a little bit antsy about Ishmael's tactics, and how we could relate, given the last manager. So yeah, it's not a massive surprise. As soon as the result went against them, they came out in their droves and with dismay and stuff, because it is one of those things, isn't it? You can win ugly, you win ugly, and people will accept it. But if you lose ugly, then people are wondering, where's the long term planning for that? But I mean, we're probably one of those clubs who can definitely relate to what those West Brom fans are thinking. If they get success, then they'll take it in spite of the performances. But really, they're not a club we've been renowned for this sort of football. And I'm sure deep down, a lot of those fans would like to get back to the slick passing style, which has they've been renowned for over the last generation or so, really.
Yeah, and I know it's not Ismail's style, but there are players in that squad who are more suited to playing, a little bit of football than they are to playing the current style of play. We then went on, of course, to play against Birmingham, another team who aren't known for their brilliant football aesthetically, but has to be said, Steve, they got their tactics spot on against us, and differently to West Brom, they did manage to keep us quiet for the most part on Saturday.
Yeah, we looked really tired, I thought, and quite sloppy. I think that's how I would describe it. I mean, the first half was quite a bit of a non-event, really. I mean, not a lot happened. Birmingham had that goal disallowed. If I'm honest, I haven't seen the replay back from the angle that suggests whether it was on or offside. I know some have said that they felt they were lucky with it.
I thought he was onside, I'll be honest. That was my reaction at the time, and it was my reaction after seeing the replay.
Yeah, that's fair enough then. But I mean, we were just a bit sloppy, weren't we? I mean, there was that, Hamer, remember, was caught out, wasn't he? He was out a goal, and then the Birmingham player has had a shot and it's gone over. I remember at the time thinking, Christ alive, be careful here. We just didn't seem at it. I mean, we were misplacing passes. We seemed to be picking wrong options. Then sometimes we'd underhit the pass, then we'd overhit one. It was just a poor performance. I don't know whether if it was the fact that we'd had a bit of a grueling week that obviously it had caught up with us, but we just weren't at the races, were we?
No, Matt, what do you think about it? Because I tend to agree with Steve. I thought tiredness, particularly in the second half, and seeing players like Ethan Laird, his touch just wasn't there, and he was, the ball was just bouncing off of him. We couldn't keep the ball. It just seemed like it was a game too much for us.
Yeah, well, I was going to mention what you say about Birmingham. Yeah, I thought Birmingham were poor. I'll be honest. I thought they were really poor, but we were exhausted and unable to string two passes together, as Steve was saying. In fact, I had a brief exchange with a Birmingham fan after the game, and he agreed that they were no great shakes themselves, but in the sense of we couldn't do anything with it. I mean, we still had, 74 or something % of the ball or whatever. It's a ridiculous statistic. But in terms of doing something, we seemed unable to conjure up ideas. It wasn't sticking. Piro was very quiet game. Patterson was, who we saw, as just talked about, so reliant on creating for us. He had a poor game. He was almost trying too hard with his cross-field switch passes, which were under-hit or over-hit and going straight out of play. And then going on to what you were just saying, Guto, how reliant we are in this formation of our wing-backs. And we played Ethan Laird right back first half. We switched him to left-back second half, which was, for everyone to see, an unmitigated disaster. He was tired, but also he doesn't want to take it at that point. He wants to take it from the outside, but he couldn't when he was on the left side, and the ball was just bouncing off him. The experiment of Latabodier, I feel a bit sorry for him. He's not a wing back. We saw it at Derby away. He'll try, but he's not fast enough. He's not technically skilled enough. He can't beat a man. But it's like Russell Martin wants to try and mould him into a full back, and
I think he's unlucky in that sense, because actually I think his natural attributes suit being part of a back three. I thought against Birmingham he would have fitted in much nicely.
I would have rather Manning
in the back three and Manning out on the left.
100%. I thought that would have been the obvious choice, especially after he moved Laird to the left, and it came clear within about 5-10 minutes of that. Right, let's revert to type here now, because it's not working. We look completely toothless, and like I say, Patterson couldn't bring the fullbacks into the game, and they weren't doing anything. And like you mentioned, we were struggling to create. So maybe with hindsight, I know it's easy to say, move in Latabodier into Manning's position, Manning out to the left, led back to his preferred right back position, would have seen us perhaps create a little bit more. And we almost got away with what happened anyway with the Obafemi goal, which we'll talk about in a bit. It was fantastic to see him get off the mark with one of our rare, accurate through balls. Another one cutting open the defence. But it was the whole build-up play. The energy was lacking. I don't want to sound bitter. I understand I probably come across a little bit bitter. I don't want to give too much credit to Birmingham, because I feel like if we were playing like we did against West Brom, we wouldn't be discussing Birmingham at all here. I didn't think they were particularly great with anything they did, only that we were poor. I was chatting to Steve after the game, the amount of times they got the ball down the wing, and Troy Deeney or someone like Troy Deeney was completely unmarked in the middle. It's so unlike us to be so lax with our defending, with our shape, with our, at the back we seemed Bennett had a poor game, Hamer, like you say, he got caught out once or twice, but ultimately kept us in the game when they tried to go through one-on-one and tried to round him. So I think all in all, I don't think there's a player on the pitch I'd probably give more than 5 or 6 out of 10 for. And that's predominantly on us and our tiredness, and maybe the week being as long as it was. But 6 points out of 9, I'll take that. I'd have taken that before the Cardiff game, and I think it put it into perspective. I think it was a good week.
Oh, definitely. And in fairness, I thought Birmingham were better than what you give them credit for. I thought their centre backs, were just didn't put a foot wrong. Deeney had a good game, and I thought Chong was absolutely fantastic. He is a brilliant talent, and I was very impressed by the way he played. But Steve, if there is one positive to be taken out of the game, it is that we showed that actually we can score out of nothing. It was a long ball up the pitch. The one time that we caught out the Birmingham back five. Obafemi doing what Obafemi was bought to do, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. I thought going forward we were awful. It was quite funny when I watched it back, listening to Chris O'Leary saying that we were creating nothing, and obviously that was literally seconds before the ball over the top from man. And then, to be fair to Obafemi, I thought the first touch especially was superb. I mean, it wasn't the easiest ball to control, but he's managed to touch it in front of him. Obviously, he's taken another one. If anything, the worst touch was actually the finish. It wasn't the cleanest of hits, but it was enough to go in. And at that point, I was thinking to myself, well, we're going to steal a draw here, even though we haven't played very well at all. And I suppose there's even in the back of my head thinking, could now this change the game to the point where we can nick it? Because obviously Birmingham had been on a poor run, so to speak, and you're thinking, well, their heads are bound to go down now because they were winning. They've had chances to put the game to bed and haven't taken it. Now we've scored from our first meaningful attack, but obviously it didn't end up that way. But as you say, we bought Obafemi to score goals, and it's great that he's off the mark. He hasn't had as many minutes as we probably like due to his injuries, but he's looked lively in the games he has played, and yeah, that'll do in the world of good. The last thing you need when you've got a striker is that they go on a long wait for their first goal, and in terms of minutes, it certainly wasn't that long to wait for Obafemi. So yeah, off and running, and first of many, we hope.
Yeah, definitely. And Matt, Swans are now 16th in the table, 17 points. We're not too far off that cluster. We're 4 points off the playoffs, but there are a lot of teams in the same situation as the Swans, kind of around anything between kind of 15 and 21 points. That mid-table section is looking bloated at the moment. Does that, I guess, my thinking on this is that the past week for the Swans shows why there are so many clubs like that, because a 46-game season, we've said it before, it's brutal, it's arduous, and teams are inevitably going to have a lot of ups and downs. It's very difficult to string 2-3 wins together. And so you're always going to have teams that just have a lot of off days and have these tired spells. And a lot of teams are just going to be picking up points here and there. And I guess the Swans fit into that category this season, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, teams will inevitably take points off each other. I think there was one of the, I think it might have been Coventry and two other teams where one had beaten one 4-0, the other beat someone else 5-0, and Luton was one of the other teams as well. But the way the results go, you look like one team is so much better than another team. People just end up beating each other. And it's early doors. I think what's important to look at is the direction in which teams are going. And I think we knew before a ball was kicked this season, this would be a long one. This is going to be a season of transition, and we would certainly look better towards the final third of the season than we would in the first third. So the fact that we're not nestled at the bottom of the table at the moment is a bonus in terms of where we are in our progress. We've picked up a few good results this week with impressive performances, and that will be something that we'll look to build on and build confidence from. But we're only headed in one direction. We're only going to get better at playing this style of play. We're only going to get more incisive. We're going to add to the squad of players that suit us and slowly shed some of the players who perhaps don't fit in. So as time goes on, we're going to look better. We're going to look more comfortable in this style. Draw direct comparisons between this and Graham Potter's season, if you like, where we only got going there, towards the midway point. And in the end, barring a couple of slip-ups towards the end, we could have perhaps sneaked into the playoffs and made a go of it from there. But certainly we looked better in the second half of the season under Potter than we did under the first. And I think not too dissimilar here, where we're going to look better later on. So I'd more be concerned with where we're going to go from here. And it looks like our results will pick up as we start getting more and more comfortable. Olivier Ntcham's declared that he's feeling fitter now than he has at any point since being here, which is a positive. And the signings in general have been great. We've looked the likes of Flynn Downs, who we've spoken about at length, of how impressive he's been and how he's worked so well with Grimes. And we talked about Perot and Patterson earlier on the podcast, but the signs are there. that we're heading in the right direction. So yes, there's a mid-table cluster there who will take points off each other, but I'm sure that after Christmas we'll be taking more points off teams than they'll be taking off us. And next season's the one for me. If we don't manage to do something miraculous this season, then I would expect next season us to be a lot higher up.
One team that's looking up at that mid-table cluster is Cardiff City, who, after losing their 8th consecutive league game, which is a new club record, they finally, Steve, got rid of Mick McCarthy. My first question to you is, what took them so long?
He's doing a great job. I don't know what you're talking about. We could have set a record that no one could have ever broken. They should have stuck with it. Everyone deserves time in football.
As I said on Twitter, Steve, what's the world coming to when a man can't lose 8 games on the bounce without losing his job? It's disgraceful.
Loyalty
for Mick, I say.
Football. Loyalty is dead in football, honestly. It's awful.
As the Paddy Power Ryan Giggs advert showed.
Oh, honestly, I mean, did either of you see Cardiff's game against Middlesbrough?
Well, we were actually, both of us we went up with Stuart James on Saturday, so we got there about half time in that game, so we were in the pub, they already 1 down. Like it was sort of on in the background. One of the main things I remember was just after half time, there were a couple of goalmouth scrambles for Cardiff, and I have absolutely no idea how they didn't score. It was like they were trying not to. It was unbelievable.
That was the best part of the game if you're a Cardiff City fan. I mean, like the rest of the game, they were hopeless. The first half in particular, I mean, if you thought they were bad against Swansea, I mean, this took it to a whole new level. They were so wide open. Their midfield was utterly invisible. The defence was totally disorganised. Middlesbrough were tearing them apart, but just couldn't score. Just their finishing was dreadful. And in the end, Middlesbrough needed a extremely soft penalty to take the lead. But I mean, it should have already been about 2 or 3 by that stage. Cardiff just looked totally lost. And I mean, Mick McCarthy's last act as Cardiff manager was to bring on 2 youngsters off the bench for their debuts. I was thinking, that's going to be great for their development. Bring them on when they're already 2-0 down in the worst performance that we've seen from this club in years. I mean, that's really going to, pave the way for a bright future for these kids. But I guess, Matt, that was a sign that he had already given up and that he was, then he knew, what fate lied in store for him. I mean, how do you think Cardiff fans will look back at him? Because obviously the way he ended his Cardiff career was abysmal, and his tactics in the last few games have been shocking. But he did win more games than he lost, and he did, turn things around when he first arrived there. If you look in his record purely statistically, you'd say, he wasn't that bad, was he?
We said exactly how he was going to go, didn't we? You'd have the bounce of coming in, and would they possibly be stupid enough to give him a contract off the back of it? And it played out exactly as we expected it to be honest with you. But no, I'm sure Cardiff fans will revise their thoughts and come up with an alternative timeline of events, because there's certain people out there who painted Mick McCarthy as the next Pep Guardiola when he got given his new contract, and the reality was he just got a bit of a bump out of the team, and they put a bit of a run together, hadn't they? And they did string quite a few wins in a row and look like he pulled the wool over their eyes. So no, from what I've seen in the press regarding his sacking, there's still been very little desire from the people above at the top level to, revise their thinking and wonder if they'll go down another route. It's just ego driven. I feel like they want short-term results. Perhaps, to shithouse their way into the Premier League. I don't know, because the reality is to go to a footballing manager, I mean, that's going to take, A, it's going to take money, B, it's going to take time, and C, it's probably going to take a relegation, because that transition is not going to be easy. So do they just keep rehashing the same old bollocks and come out with another hoofball manager? Well, according to the bookies, maybe. because that's, some of the names up there don't fill me with a sort of fear that Cardiff are going to suddenly come back and play like, Swansea circa 2011, 2012. So, he's another one in a long list of names for Cardiff that have come in, had short-term results, short-term success, and has gone now with a nice little payoff. So keep it up.
I mean, Steve, if you were in charge, if you were a Cardiff fan, and this may take a bit of imagination on your part, what would you like to see the club do? Because Matt makes a good point. If they do go for a footballing manager, that squad is not set up to play good football. So you are seriously risking a relegation if you do that. On the other hand, if you go for another Warnock, Harris, McCarthy type, they probably suit the squad a bit more, and you'd probably back them to get the kind of new manager bounce that the likes of Harris and McCarthy enjoyed. But long term, you're going to find yourself back in the same position. So what do you want to see? Do you want to see them risk a relegation to try and change the habit of a lifetime, or do you just accept that, this squad is incapable of it, and we've got to, find the man to fit the tools he'll have at his disposal?
I think it's a tough one, really, isn't it? I mean, when you have lost 8 in a row, it depends how badly they fear relegation. If they really fear it, they probably have to get in some sort of firefighter to make sure it doesn't happen. And then I would say reset in the summer and then just be prepared to take the bumps in the road. But it's easier to do that in the summer rather than obviously at this stage where, we're not far off now. Well, we're over a quarter of the way through, aren't we, the season. Obviously, you've lost 8 in a row. When you're in that situation, you need results, don't you? So I think they should probably look short term again. What they should have done really was Mick came in. He did a good job to start with, made sure they weren't going down, and then they should have had somebody else in then from the summer with a more of a longer term view. But obviously, they don't seem to do that. So yeah, they find themselves in this situation now. And like I said, I think arguably, as you say, I mean, with the players they got, it probably does suit a more direct style of play. So that's probably what they should do. But I'm hoping they go down the old has-been route again. Someone like Steve Keane would be tremendous, or maybe John Barnes. I think they're definitely the men from my point of view.
John Barnes would at least try to play some good football.
But he's completely inept.
He is completely inept as a manager. His record speaks for itself. I'm just looking here, Matt, for the odds. I mean, yesterday, these odds are from yesterday, but Chris Wilder was the favourite at 6-4. But David Pritchard has come out and said that he understands that Wilder wouldn't be interested at this moment. I wonder why. I mean, that's a manager who's made some, surprising managerial moves in his past, but Cardiff would probably top the lot. The other names that they've got top of their list: Michael Flynn, ex-Newport manager; Jody Morris, who was linked with the Swans job in the summer. Neil Harris is 8-1 to come back there. Steve Morrison, who's caretaker manager, 10-1. Chris Houghton, Roy Keane, Michael Appleton, Robert Page, Alan Pardew, Mark Hudson, who I've seen a couple of Cardiff fans say they wouldn't mind seeing him come back to the club. Gareth Ainsworth, Alec Neil, Craig Bellamy, Gary Monk. That would be an interesting one. He's only 20-1. Steve Bruce, 20-1. Tony Pulis, 20-1. John Terry, Mark Bowen. I mean, are there any names there that you, as a Swansea fan, would really like to see Cardiff go for out of the ones mentioned there?
Most of them, to be honest, I don't think there's an answer for Cardiff. I think they're going to have to take pain. I think the reality is, Wilder fell out at Sheffield United with the owners. Well, he's going to have a sharp turn if he thinks he's going to get on with what's going on at Cardiff, who don't even have a director of football in place and refuse to get one. I don't know if you saw the article that was circulated on Twitter and the like on the weekend about, I think it was like a board meeting or the discussion with Tan and Ken Chu and their decision with Mick McCarthy and stuff. But if anything in that story is correct, it is a real eye opener for Cardiff fans. They are financially insolvent, really speaking. They are struggling. There's no money for January. There's no money for next summer. A new manager would have to come in and work wonders with this team, which means they would have to go for a long ball manager, which you bring to the likes. Then you look at your Tony Pulis's and your stuff, who I think is past his sell-by date by about 5 or 6 years. So that would be, exactly where they would probably be looking at for an option. Because they need someone, if they're not going to give any new manager money, they need someone who's going to work with what they've got. Secondly, in that article, it suggests that Vincent Tan actually actively prefers a long ball style of play, which means unless he gets a director of football in who's going to stand up and go, actually, as a football man, this is the way we go, he is only answerable to himself. And if that's what he wants to do, he's going to do that. And so he's going to be in the interviews, and he's going to be conducting those appointments based on his preference. So
Cardiff's relationship with Vincent Tan is fascinating because it's basically Stockholm syndrome. They can't live without him because he is keeping the club.
It was the same as Sam Aman.
Actually,
same as Sam Aman.
It's they're completely reliant on his money, so they can't live without him. But on the other hand, he's killing the club from a footballing point of view because he doesn't understand football. And they don't have people at that club that know how to run a football club effectively. That's not just Tan. That's the likes of Dalman and Chu as well. I mean, that track record speaks for itself. They've made the policy, the direction they've been taking the club on. It's backwards. It's so old fashioned. It's out of date. It's about 20 years in the past. But they're stuck in this position where they'd love to get rid of Vincent Tan and bring in somebody who knew their football. But, at the end of the day, who else is going to be bankrolling the club the way Vincent Tan is and pumping in the millions that he is just to keep them afloat?
Oh, absolutely agree. I mean, if we compare, I mean, we in not too dissimilar position with disliking our owners kind of thing, but we compare the situations, and there are some stark contrasts between Levy and Kaplan and Vincent Tan. They do have similarities in that initially they wanted to be like the decision makers, where Vincent Tan very much still is, but also we look at the likes of the Bob Bradleys and the stuff like that, and the links between the US and the UK where we would early doors. But Vincent Tan seems to be ploughing money into that club just to keep them afloat. Nothing could ever be attributed to our shareholders as they're ploughing in ridiculous amounts of money into Swansea. I don't think anyone's ever made that accusation at them. Secondly, at least, as much as we've said a lot of negative things about our owners, at least they had the foresight when things went tits up to say, we're going to get a football man in here. And the likes of the Trevor Birch came in and whatever and oversaw footballing operations and stuff, because at that point they weren't very sure exactly what they were doing. So, I mean, in Vincent Tan's case, again, we talk about ego. We talk about a man who wants the power, wants the control. He's not willing to relinquish that from what I can see. So they are at his mercy. He is going to make those decisions based on what he thinks is best. I mean, wasn't it only like 5 or 6 years ago he was talking about why isn't our goalkeeper scoring more goals? He's completely out of touch. He doesn't understand the sport. So really speaking, they're destined to fail until they take the pain we've talked about. That would be a strip out from the top down. That would be a complete exodus of most of the squad. That would be inevitable relegation, possibly multiple relegations. It would need a root and branch clear out, and it would take years. So, I mean, the only thing they could do in the meantime is throw insane amounts of money at it and give a manager the opportunity to shithouse a Premier League promotion over the next 2 or 3 years and hope that they can somehow rebuild with that money. But, I mean, it's looking a bleak prospect for them. At the moment, they just need to look to see if they can still be a championship club next year.
Well, they're currently 2 points above the bottom three. If it wasn't for Derby's points deductions, then they would be in the bottom three. My feeling is that they're probably going to be spared by the fact, whatever happens, they'll probably be spared by the fact that there are an awful lot of really bad teams in the Championship, or at least you could probably find 3 that are clearly worse than them over an entire season. But at the moment, there's no doubt they are, by some distance, the worst team in the Championship. I saw Barnsley against Sheffield United on Sunday. They weren't great, Barnsley. You can see why they were in the bottom 3. But at least Barnsley had some fight, and they managed to score 2 goals late on and, make something of it. They were trying. Cardiff need somebody first and foremost that's just going to get them trying. Before we move back to discuss the Swans, dare I say it, Steve, are there similarities between Cardiff City and Man United? They're not two clubs that are often compared to each other, apart from by perhaps a certain journalist. But you're looking at two clubs there who've had tons of money ploughed in over the years, no doubt about it, compared to the clubs around them in the league. But two clubs who refuse to learn from their mistakes, two managers who've been shown to be quite tactically inept this season. One of them's already gone. The other one is rumoured to be on the way. But again, like Matt was saying there, it comes down, the manager is almost kind of the front of house. And what goes on behind the scenes is actually far more damaging to a club. And we're seeing in Manchester United, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer is just following in the footsteps of David Moyes and Louis van Gaal and Jose Mourinho, managers who've arrived at Old Trafford and ultimately failed. But they are being led from upstairs by directors and CEOs who don't actually know what they're doing and are just totally out of their depth at that level. And there is, at any club, I think that is what makes the biggest difference. I think if you are run well in the boardroom, then that makes such a difference to how you perform on the pitch. And regardless of who your manager is, if the boardroom's in chaos, that it's going to be difficult to get any kind of long-term momentum.
Yeah, I think, well, you could probably include us in that when, if you look around the time after the takeover, we were a mess, weren't we, in terms of what we were doing. We'd lost the Swansea way. We were appointing people we would never have appointed before, and then we were doing it on short-term deals, looking in firefighting mode, survival mode. And it's just not the way to go, is it? You need to have a proper structure in place. I mean, Cardiff haven't had that for a long period of time. They sort of struck lucky with Warnock, but if you look at all the other managers they've appointed since Malky Mackay, they've all been, bad, I would say. Certainly average at best. I mean, like I say, United are sort of in a similar position. The only thing I'll give Solskjaer is, if he did leave the club tomorrow, he would be leaving them in a better position than what he found them, which probably isn't the case for pretty much every Cardiff manager that has gone in there, apart from Neil Warnock in recent years. So I think you've got to have a structure in place. I'm pleased with the Swans now that we did say in the summer that we wanted to appoint someone that wanted to play the style of play that we like. And it does seem now like everybody is aligned and the academy are in the same way in terms of playing the same way. So when you think of it like that, it does feel like we're certainly learning from mistakes and we're on the right track, whereas there's other clubs that aren't. But that's a good thing because you don't want everybody to be on the right track. As far as I'm concerned, long may it continue up the road that those idiots don't see the light and they carry on struggling.
Yes, we'll wait with bated breath to see who they actually appoint, but it is going to be an interesting one because our dear rivals are at a bit of a crossroads. There's no doubt about that. Let's move on to look at Swansea's next opponents, Peterborough United, who actually are now above Cardiff in the table despite being below them throughout the campaign, so up until this weekend. They are an interesting one, Steve, newly promoted, and with Darren Ferguson at the helm, I think it's fair to say that we all have a certain idea of what to expect from a Peterborough team that's just been promoted to the Championship. You expect them to be quite attacking, and you expect them to be really poor at the back. And for the most part, I think it's fair to say that that's what we've seen from them this season.
Yeah, like you say, I mean, obviously Darren Ferguson, is this his fourth spell in charge there?
Third or fourth,
something like that. Isn't it? Like it does seem a bit like, obviously he'll leave at some point, someone else will come in, and then you're more or less certain that the manager after that will once again be Darren Ferguson. It's like, they may as well just stick at it because obviously, he always seems to be in there. But I mean, as you say, that Peterborough are usually quite a decent watch. If you, like you said, they'll have a go at teams. They always seem to have a decent striker that will bang a few goals in. And yeah, like I said, that's what their approach will be. And they may have a chance of staying up, I think, because certainly if you take that type of attitude, if you're always going to win maybe a few more games than others, you may, obviously they'll ship goals, don't get me wrong. But Yeah, I think Peterborough will come here and have a go, which means it should be a decent game. They're not going to be one of those type of teams like Hull and Millwall that came here thinking, right, lads, let's get everybody behind the ball and try and frustrate the opposition. I don't think we're going to see that from Peterborough. So, yeah, I think it'll be an interesting one on Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. They're going to come here to attack. They're not going to rely on their defence, because I don't think they can rely on their defence. I think they did have the worst defence in the division. I'm not sure if they still
do. Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. And they also did have the worst away record in the division. They hadn't picked up a single away point until they beat Hull last midweek. They won 2-1 away at Hull, which really speaks volumes about Hull. But since then, they've also gone on to win 2-1 at home against QPR. So back-to-back wins. Is there a suggestion, Matt, that we're playing them at the wrong time here?
I could say that, and I think the last-minute winner against QPR as well will give them a lot of confidence. And like you say, how we felt after beating West Brom, stringing together 2 wins on the bounce. It does make you feel an air of invincibility. Then, doesn't it? It makes you feel like, hang on, we can put a run together here. Let's hope that's not the case when they come down on the weekend, because on the face of it, and you two may look at this differently, it will certainly be interesting, but a Peterborough team is the sort of team I would handpick to play against. Now, you may have different views on this, but I mean, a team that isn't going to sit deep and close the lines for us and make things difficult for us to create, because I hate that. But they're going to come at us, but also they're not world beaters. They are down there just outside the relegation zone. They are newbies to the division again, and there will be gaps for us to exploit. And the relationship with a week off, a week's rest, and to rest up and get some minutes on the training ground again, I hope that we can exploit those gaps. I certainly, off the back of that disappointment against Birmingham, I would look at Peterborough and say, if we could have them at home on Saturday. The only stick in the mud there is the fact that they are going to be high on confidence themselves, and so it will be a trickier result than it would have been a trickier game than it would have been this time last week. But this style of play hopefully will suit us, and we'll be able to create some space, because we're going to have the lion's share of possession, and hopefully with them coming at us and trying to play a attacking game, we'll be able to pick holes, and fingers crossed that's how it plays out.
Yeah, just 2 clean sheets so far this season for Peterborough. One of them was against Bournemouth, which is a little bit unexpected perhaps, but definitely some defensive deficiencies there to exploit. But it is worth noting, Steve, Peterborough have this knack, and fair play to them. They are, in terms of their transfer policy, they have this knack of just finding players, often from non-league or at least lower leagues, and just they turn out to be absolutely fantastic. And then more often than not, they're strikers. When you look through the years, and the latest they've got is Siriki Dembele, brilliant in League One last season. He started scoring regularly in the Championship as well. He looks like he is kind of their great big hope for this season. If he can keep scoring at the rate that he is, and I don't see why he wouldn't, then they will have a decent chance. But it is mad, isn't it, how clubs like Peterborough just consistently unearth these players just through, again, we spoke about it. It's good management off the pitch and a good transfer policy.
Yeah, it is. I mean, like I mentioned before, the like strikers, and as you say, it's spot on. I mean, like in the early days of the McAnthony reign, they had the likes of Mikhail Smith and Aaron McLean. Remember after that, they had Dwight Gale briefly, didn't they? And they made a massive profit on him, even though he wasn't there for very long. There was Britt Sombalonga, wasn't there? And then there's Johnson, Clark Harris, I think now, and as you say, now Dembele as well. So, yeah, they seem to have this knack, don't they? I mean, if you look in non-league, there really are players about. I mean, Dwight Gale's an interesting one, because I think it was John Still that found him, and he used to watch about 3 games a week non-league. That's how he used to pick so many up. I mean, he was at Dagenham for years, I think, and St Luton, I think he took them into the league. So just shows you if you're willing to put the groundwork in. I know that when Frank Burrows was Swans manager, we're talking obviously like 30 years ago now, but I think he used to watch a lot of non-league, and then picked up the likes of Des Little and John Williams on the cheap, and obviously we sold them for what was big money at the time. So I think, if you can do some good scouting, you will have to put probably a lot of games in, because you'll see a lot of players that probably are in non-league for a reason, obviously, but there'll always be a few hidden gems, and I think if you can find them, obviously, there's big money to be made in it. So Peterborough obviously have got a bit of a knack for it, haven't they? And you have to give them credit for that, because it's probably made them quite self-sustainable down the years, although obviously they do have an owner who can put money in if needs be.
Yeah, he's a good owner, Darren McAnthony. He's I like him, I'll be honest. By the way, the last time Peterborough beat Swansea was in 1998, in the league, I should say. The last time they beat us in the league was in 1998. So with that in mind, Matt, can I have your prediction, please?
Set me up here, haven't you? Yeah, I think I would, like I say, I would look at the team like Peterborough and hope that that's the sort of game that we can perhaps flourish. I'll put us down for a 2-0 win for Saturday.
Steve?
I am going to go for a win, but I'm not going to go for 2-0. I do think Peterborough may well score against us, so I'm going to say 2-1.
I'm going to say that we're going to win, but I think it's going to be a wacky one. I'm going to go 3-2. I think Peterborough fancy their chances, counter-attacking, picking holes. Likewise, we'll fancy our chances. I think both teams will go for it, and I think it'll be a wild one. The kind of match that we've not really been accustomed to seeing over the last few years. But I think all three of us are confident that we can kind of recharge the batteries from Birmingham and hit back with a win against a team who are back to be down the bottom of the table, although it has to be said that they are in good form at the moment. After we face Peterborough, we've got an away trip halfway through next week to Coventry. Now, this is a very interesting one, boys, because Coventry, they've done well since they got promoted to the Championship, but I don't think anybody, even Coventry fans, expected them to have quite the start of the season they have. They're up there in the top six. They've been really impressive, and Steve, one of the most impressive performers for them, a key player, is Viktor Gerkaresh, who, it's fair to say, did not set the world alight when he was at the Liberty.
Yeah, I had a feeling that was coming through then. Got to give him credit, haven't we? I mean, he's scored quite a few goals this season. He must be one of the top scorers in the league, is he? And yeah, I obviously wasn't very complimentary about him on this podcast. So yeah, I think he deserves a lot of credit. It does. The one thing I would say with Yorker is that he didn't impress me at all when he played, but at the same time, he didn't really have that run of games, did he? And you look back now and you think maybe that would have helped, or it certainly wouldn't have done any harm, would it? But Steve Cooper obviously wasn't interested in doing that. So, and I don't think any of us really complained about it either, based on what we saw. But yeah, it does look like obviously he's a better player than we give him credit for. So I think we all know how Tuesday's going to end, don't we?
Yeah. If you are a believer in the curse, then you definitely do. The one thing I'll say is that he hasn't scored in any of his last 5 games for club and country.
No. I was going to say, normally the curse is a player that doesn't score goals scores against us. And then I was going to say, Gerkaresh, well, he's scoring, so I didn't realise he hadn't scored in 5. Yeah, it's definitely happening.
He is the 4th top scorer in the Championship with 9 goals. But I mean, Matt, it is funny, isn't it, how a player can go from being, the best you can say about Gerkaresh at Swansea was that he didn't set the world alight here. I agree with Steve. He didn't really get much of a chance, but I don't think, I don't think anybody can blame the club for not giving him more of a chance, considering that he didn't really have much of an impact when he came on. I definitely didn't think he was as bad as a lot of the keyboard warriors made him out to be, but he wasn't any great shakes. And in fairness, the second half of last season at Coventry, he wasn't.
I was about to call the Coventry game out, actually. Yeah, that was the one he got about 90 there, didn't he? I think he got the full game, or more or less the full game, didn't he? In that one. I think that was the one perhaps where people came back. He did score, didn't he, in that game? If I remember. Did he not score a goal for us in that game?
In the Cup, I think he scored 1 goal for us in the Cup, did he?
Right, okay. I remember a game he scored for us, but he still looked off. He looked low on confidence, and he missed quite a few in that game, and he scored a scrappy goal, a header. I thought it was against Coventry. I may be mistaken then. But
he started against Coventry, but he didn't score against Coventry.
Okay.
was Ayew who scored. And he didn't have the best of games that day.
In Coventry, I'll be honest, when we did play him last year, I wasn't, I was quite impressed with them. They certainly worked harder than us in the games, and thought that they looked every bit the sort of team that should get more results than they were getting. To be honest with you, and perhaps a bit of bad luck and naivety was costing them. But it's all clicked together this season. They're up in fourth. I know they're in a bit of a. They picked up 2 points in the last 3 games, so maybe not flying at the moment, but certainly still high in the table and will be full of confidence from their start. No, I say this is exactly what you need to do when you come into this division, is consolidate and build a platform to go on from, and they look like they've done that well, and they've really impressed at the start of the season. And what you always need someone to stick it in the back of the net. Is come from an unlikely source, but they perhaps lacked that a little bit, and now they've got someone up there who's going to do it, and fair play to them. They're looking good, and it's going to be a very difficult game for us.
Callum O'Hare, the other player who always looks good for Coventry, just a really classy operator, leading their midfield. Brilliant player. I mean, Steve, in fairness, if there's one club whose fans deserve a bit of success and a bit of joy, it is Coventry, because since they were relegated from the Premier League, they've had a lot of miserable times, and even after kind of getting promoted back from League Two to the Championship, their first season back up until this season, they were playing in Birmingham, and they were playing in Northampton before that, etc. They've had a torrid time of things, Coventry. So, from a neutral's point of view, it's nice to see fans who have been through such a horrible time actually getting a bit of reward in the end.
Yeah, I think it's something that we can relate to, really, isn't it? Because obviously when we were young, we were a club that went through, bad times, and then we came out the other side, and it does make that success that bit more enjoyable. So I know what you mean. I mean, Coventry obviously were remarkably in the top 5, weren't they, for 30 odd years in a row. But I think up until they went up from League Two, they hadn't finished in the top 6 of any division since the 70s as well. So you think that is a club's fans that have just not been used to their team winning games of football consistently for decades. So it is nice to see them having a little bit of success, to be fair, isn't it? And I mean, it has been tough for them. They played Northampton for a bit, didn't they? Obviously played at Birmingham. I think that ground is not the best. I'm glad they're back there now for their own sake, but I mean, it'd be a bit like the Swans playing in Velindre. It's miles out from the centre. It's by the motorway. There's not a lot there. I mean, I'd be furious if we had that type of situation, but at least they are now back in their own city, and I don't think anyone can really begrudge them having a little bit of success, really. I mean, they don't really have a rival either, do they? So I can't even point to other clubs saying they wish ill on them. But yeah, I think Coventry are certainly. You always think, don't you? Sometimes certain clubs they have their days in the sun, and then I'm not saying they so much deserve to suffer, but they don't deserve to maybe to continue having that glory, and Coventry certainly have had a tough time over the last couple of decades, and I think they now deserve some brighter times.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can sustain it over the course of the season. Just look ahead to both of these games together, Matt. Are there any players that you think one could do with a rest from the Swans, and any players who you would like to see in either of the 2 upcoming games?
I'm delighted we've got a break now, because that Birmingham game perhaps looked a step too far. We were talking about, when we previewed it, I ridiculously predicted a win against West Brom and a draw against Birmingham, but I certainly thought that maybe we had the wind in our sails against West Brom, and I didn't expect us, though, to be as had the stuffing knocked out of us as much as we did at St Andrews. So I do think the break will be great, and I hope they utilise that with a lot of rest period, because I think that was our main issue. A lot of our mistakes came from tiredness. So we saw enough in Cardiff and West Brom to say that the understanding is there and it's growing every game, and use the opportunity now to make sure the likes of the players who we've really struggled to get on the pitch, like your Chams and your Liam Walshes and stuff like that, are rested up and give us those options, because we're probably going to need to make changes between the two games, maybe only a couple, hopefully, but there are a couple of mainstays. I would just wrap in cotton wool and ice and just make sure that Patterson and Pirot and the like are fit for both. But certainly now we've seen Obafemi come off the mark. That's a great bonus for us, because it gives us a plan B. Without being too critical on the lad, I don't see it in Liam Cullen at the moment. I think he desperately needs 35 games at another team. If he has to go down to League One or even 2 to get those games, then so be it. Because for me, that's career defining now at his age. He now needs to do that to prove that he can be relied upon week in, week out, and then come back, hopefully a different player, and banging the goals for Swans next season. And I hope he gets that move in January, if it's available to him, because we desperately need another option for Pirot when he's tired or he's not quite hitting it. And hopefully Obafemi's going to give us that option now off the bench. And again, like I say, a fit and firing and Cham is a Rolls Royce of a player. So we need to give those players the opportunity to get their fitness up, to make sure that they're sharp and ready to go, and let's see where that takes us. But it'll be important to we don't pick up any unnecessary injuries, and we go into the weekend with plenty of options and opportunities to rotate if needed for the Coventry game.
And just before we go on to kind of give predictions for the Coventry game, Steve, looking again at the two matches together, do you think it is important that we do get at least sort of one win minimum out of these two, just to keep the kind of momentum and the good feeling going after the wins against Cardiff and West Brom?
It's not like absolutely vital, is it? But I think realistically we could do with winning one of them, because you're looking after that, we're away to Bournemouth. They haven't lost yet. That's going to be a very difficult game. I think we'd all be pretty delighted to get anything out of that one. So, yeah, I think, especially the Peterborough game, we'd be looking at that for a win, won't we? I think if we don't win that, we'll be a bit disappointed on Saturday. But, we just want to keep ticking over, really, don't we? I do feel like we've made a step forward, as I'm sure both of you do. A lot of people do after the Cardiff and West Brom wins. So, hopefully we will get another win on the board on Saturday, and then I think we'd all be quite happy with the draw from Coventry. If we got 4 points, I think that would be brilliant. But I think if I was offered 3, I'd probably take it.
Well, do you think we're going to get 3, 1 or 0 points? What's your prediction for Coventry away?
1-0, Gerkaresh.
That would be typical, Matt.
I haven't done this much this season. I think Coventry might be a bit stronger than us in their current confidence. So I'll go. I'll agree. I'll go a 1-0 defeat at that one, but I hope I'm wrong.
I'm going to be a bit more positive, but I think it is going to be a difficult trip away to the Rico, or whatever it's called these days. I'll go for a 1-1. I think that would be a great result, considering what Coventry have been doing this season. Well, hopefully you haven't minded the diversionary activity, which saw us discuss Cardiff for quite some length. I'm sure you'll have enjoyed the nature of the chat, and hopefully you'll have enjoyed the rest of the podcast as well. And hopefully you'll be back to join us next week, when hopefully we'll have a couple of wins to discuss. But until then, thank you very much for listening.